You know, things have calmed down a lot on the trans front lately. Not like legally speaking, but internet discourse speaking. It seems like nobody's even making an effort to make any arguments in favor of or against trans people anymore. Like, the wealth of leftist YouTube essays on the validity of trans people have dried up because everything that needed to be said has been said. And from the right wing, I don't even see much in the way of like, here's why trans is a mental illness or whatever. You know, it's yeah, it's all legislative because it seems like culturally everyone's pretty much taken a side. At least online. In real life, there's still a lot of stuff up in the air, you know? Maybe we need to advance to stage 2 where we talk about how actually sex and gender are the same thing and you can change your sex. That's like the level 2. We're ready for part 2, you know? It's DEI now? Yeah, I suppose. It was a convenient issue. It just has been working for them, really. I mean, you can change your sex, can't you? Yeah, of course. I don't think gender and sex are the same thing, but yeah, you can change your sex for sure. That's literally what hormones do, you know? If you look up the definition of biological sex, it does not just say, oh, your chromosomes. Obviously. That wouldn't be very helpful, right? Like, that's it. You look up, what is human biological sex? Oh, it's the chromosomes. Okay. Is there any other stuff in there? Yeah, there's a bunch of other stuff. Oh, well, you can change that, as it turns out. Hormones or a sex change operation or whatever. People will say that like a neo-pussy isn't an actual pussy, but nobody says that about like reconstructive surgery on a nose or an ear after an accident. So it seems like a pretty stupid double standard to me. Elon talking about it recently. Who the f cares about what Elon's talking about? Gender reassignment surgery doubles risk of suicide for men. So Elon means trans women here. California study. Attempted suicide rate among men who had gender surgery, so trans women, was twice as high as it was before operation. Is that so? Let's find that study, huh? Investigators analyzed data on all 868 people who received a vaginoplasty and 357 people who received a phalloplasty in California from 2012 to 2018. There was an average of 2 years of data before and after surgery. And the suicide rate amongst trans women who received vaginoplasty was twice as high during the period after the surgery compared with the period during the surgery. All right? So let's find the actual study. I love articles that include office gifs. The articles from the Babylon Bee. Yeah, well, let's look at the actual here study. Ah, we found the study. Rates of psychiatric emergencies before and after gender affirming surgery. Methods. Vaginoplasty and metoidioplasty. What is metoidioplasty? Phalloplasty is when you make a dick. What's metoidioplasty? Is that just a synonym? Metoidioplasty is an alternative to phalloplasty. Uses tissues from a hormone-enlarged clitoris. Youch, that sounds uncomfortable. About, I never even heard of that. Huh. Shifting around the clitoris. That sounds dangerous. Oh, whatever, you know. I'm not a doctor. You can make a dick? Yeah, phalloplasty and I guess metoidioplasty aren't as far along as vaginoplasty, but, you know, doctors do be doing stuff. They do be learning. All emergency room and inpatient psychiatric encounters were identified, noting those involving suicide attempts. Rates of these encounters were calculated before and after gender-affirming surgery using data first operation if staged. On average, patients had a balanced 2 years of observation before and after their surgery. 869 and 357 patients had undergone vaginoplasty and phalloplasty, with 137 and 74 having at least one psychiatric encounter. Although the overall proportion of those experiencing a psychiatric encounter was similar between the vaginoplasty and phalloplasty group, suicide rates were more common in the vaginoplasty group, 4.4% versus 1.7%. Okay, so we're dealing with incredibly low incidence rates here, considering we're talking about trans people, a very marginalized group. The rate of a psychiatric encounter occurring after surgery, if an episode prior surgery occurred, was 33.9 and 26.5% respectively for vaginoplasty and phalloplasty groups. The overall rates of suicide attempts doubled, 3.3% versus 1.5% after vaginoplasty, effect not observed after phalloplasty. Interesting. So that's proportional to the overall rate of incidence with both groups. Let's see. Before surgery only, after surgery only. Psychiatric encounters before and after normalized about 2 years before and after. So overall 197 before surgery only. Before and after surgery. Wait, overall risk before 12.8%, overall risk after 13.7%. Overall risk suicide attempts doubled 3.3% versus 1.5% after vaginoplasty. Wait, how so? Presented before, did not present before. Of those suicide attempts. Yeah, this is risk. These are attempts. Overall risk before, overall risk after. Presented before, did not present after. Wait, presented before 30.8. Wait, I feel like something is being conflated right now. Wait, hold on. Sorry, I didn't. I shouldn't have done this because now I want to dive into the actual study. I feel like this isn't saying what it is said to be saying. Dive. These people are not looking at pre-transition rates, which are in the teens for trans mask. Well, they are, right? Because this should be normalized for roughly 2 years before and after any surgery. Wait, what does it mean present risk? Let's just look at attempts, not risk. This seems to be selected for people who are going to have a surgery. All right, I'm going to stop looking at chat. I'm on another level. I'm curious about the presentation of this data. So one thing that I accept based on the presented data is that there's a higher incident rate of suicide attempts for trans women after vaginoplasty. I wonder if you could normalize that against any broader social trends, like anti-trans activism ramped up massively in like 2014 and onwards, whereas this study began in 2012. You might see an overall increase in the rate of suicidality just based on them becoming like the chosen anti, like the reactionary subject. Though that would be normalized presumably for both vaginoplasty and phalloplasty groups. You could defer to the assumption that trans women are more emotionally unstable than trans men. That might be because of the broader social issues, right? Trans women are subjected to a lot more social stigma than trans men for a variety of reasons. Well, they're both subjected to plenty of social stigma, but I think that it tends to be a lot more virulent and hateful when directed against trans women. Just generally speaking, they seem to be the subject of broader hate, much more so than trans men. Not saying it's easier for trans men, just saying it is a little bit easier for trans men. Yeah, I am saying that, actually. You can come for me on that. Yeah, 100%. There's a reason why overwhelmingly transphobia is framed through hatred of trans women, so whatever. Not saying it's easy, though. I don't understand these rates, though. Presented before. Okay, by presented before, what do we mean by presented before? Link to the full study? God damn it. Oh, okay, so they just dug up some minuscule study from one time period in one state from 3 years ago. Okay, yeah. What do they mean by presented before? I think I read something about that. I think presented before means out of the people who had a suicide attempt, those people had attempted suicide before. Yeah, but that data is already accounted for by just simply looking at the before and after sections. Wait, overall risk after presented before. So does that mean that 30.8% of the 25 suicide attempts that happened after surgery were from people who had... No, that can't be right, because that would be just 4 divided by 25 if it was before and after surgery. What do they mean by presented before? Am I being stupid right now? The numbers don't line up if presented before means a person who had a previous suicide attempt. It means they already had psychiatric issues. Like presenting in any kind of psychiatric encounter then, rather than just a suicide attempt. Oh yeah, defined as experiencing at least one psychiatric encounter. I thought that was a euphemism for like... Wait, what defines psychiatric encounter then? Whatever. I was hoping to be able to dig in more, but since the study is so small, there's not really much for me to go into. Anyway, it's pretty easily explainable by social variables. Also, I wouldn't be surprised at all if there was a sharp and initial uptick in suicide attempts after something as traumatizing and difficult to get over as a vaginoplasty, There tend to be like a higher incident rate of, unhappiness or whatever else after something... after a major invasive surgery like that, because there's a lot of difficulty in overcoming it. Either way, not very interesting. Doesn't really say much. We have broader studies on people's happiness before and after gender transition, whether that be hormones or surgery, and overall the results are consistent and very promising. I say promising like it's like a future thing. Like promising in the sense that it indicates it's good. Yeah. Is vaginoplasty painful? All surgery is painful, but yeah, probably one on your genitals especially. Can't even imagine. Good lord. Do other types of surgeries also correlate with suicide attempts? Just like intuitively, I would imagine yes, but I don't know if that's true. Here's a study from the NIH. Possible risk factors for increased suicide following bariatric surgery. There's growing research literature suggesting there may be elevated risk of suicide following bariatric surgery. Okay. What are the results then? See, here's a real study. Okay, these are a bunch of explanations for why that might be the case. Interesting. Wouldn't surprise me. First 2 years following surgery, almost 70% 2.4. Okay. Found an overall suicide rate of 6.6 per 10,000. 13.7 per 10,000 among men and 5.2 per 10,000 among women. Holy shit. So after bariatric surgery, suicide rates for men sextuple. They're 6 times higher than normal. And for women, it would be about the same. Yeah, 6 times the suicide rate in the time period following bariatric surgery. Surgery makes you feel like shit? Yeah, yes it does. How do we refute the shitty study? It's not a matter of refutation. The study doesn't give us much to work with, and it's not like I'm going to call the office and ask for more information on their sampling or what they use to define this, that, the other. We have data. We know that bottom surgery helps trans people. It's not really arguable. The data we have on that is longitudinal, cross-sectional. It's large and it's substantiated heavily. And also, right here is indication, if nothing else, that suicidality tends to increase generally following major surgery. Yeah, but how do we convince someone our data is better than theirs? Well, you find a big rock, for one. The study doesn't say anything. The article claims it says the vaginoplasty group has double suicide rates of general population conclusion, not pre-surgery group. No, that's not true. It said specifically the difference before and after the surgery in the same group, not to the general population. As easy of a debunk as that would be, I'm afraid that's not the case. It says, our observed rate of suicide attempts in the phalloplasty group is actually similar to the general population, while the vaginoplasty group's rate is more than double that of the general population. But it's it also compares the before and after. So do we know anything about the sample group? What? There's no sample group. Are you just saying words? There's no sample group. It's longitudinal. It's before and after. It's the same people before and after. There's no sample group. Do you mean the survey population? Control? There is no control group. It's just the group. Yeah, you would not want a control group for this kind of stuff. Where does the loud buzzer? I strapped that. Yeah, where we do need, this is like, I need to incorporate more annoying audio into my streams because we don't have enough of that. Where's the extremely loud, extremely incorrect buzzer, you know? Yeah, that. Just anytime I see anyone in chat say something that I have any issue with, just really, really, Can you explain why a control group shouldn't be used here? Because it's completely irrelevant to the type of study that they're doing. The point is to compare the same group of people before and after they have a surgery. What would the control group be? Another group of people who aren't having any surgery? Why? That's not that's not what the comparison is. That'd be like if you're doing a study for like the average rate of decay in buildings that use a certain construction principle. So you have 100 buildings that were built 20 years ago and you've been measuring them for those 20 years to see if they decay. But then you also have a separate control group of just different buildings, just random other buildings. You could do that if the comparison was between the two different techniques of construction, but if you're comparing between the beginning and the end of those buildings, you wouldn't need any other group to make that comparison to. It's a study, not an experiment. Well, yeah, nobody really does experiments when it comes to stuff like long-term surgery follow-up. That if you're doing that, you're doing like new experimental surgery stuff. Not really applicable here, where it's mostly just a matter of surveying people and seeing what the results are before and after. Let's test Vosh. I think a control group that gets tricked into thinking they had the surgery. You like smear LSD on their door handle and hypnotize them into thinking that they do in fact now have a neo-pussy, and then you follow up on them with 2 years after that. They've had a very confusing life, but now finally we have like a good comparison to make.